Hey, how's everybody doing? I had to take a little bit of extra time just to remix down that opening that James Esparza, aka Tape Damage, put together for me on the Locals channel. And no, I know it's not Halloween, but it's October. And there's only so many times I'm going to be able to use that really cool intro he did the work on. So I hope you guys like it. I love it. I think it's pretty funny and dig that. How's everybody doing? I see that Viva and Barnes finished up okay. Old drill sergeant, good, good. All right. So on that note, what is everybody having? I'm having the old raging bitch, so everybody can get on my case for no variety. Reese, I agree with you. Thank you so much. America's Untold Stories. Please consider subscribing if you haven't. I'm super, super happy with how things are going. It's the show is growing nicely. Our show right now is really, really cool. We're covering Eliot Smith. That's two T's on Eliot. And yes, I take note of it because I'm constantly having to correct myself because I drop a T. I don't know why. And I was pointing that out, like, why the guy have to have this name? You know what his real first name is? Stephen. And I was like, well, why didn't he just stick with his own first name? And I wrote it to Andrew Gold, who I was talking to, and I wrote, why didn't he stick with his first name, Stephen? I put Steven, and he wrote back, you mean Stphen? Also a problematic first name. And I went, arg. So anyway, his annoying first name, but I had never heard of this artist before. And he was really out there. Dominating. I mean, it's a funny thing. Have you noticed that it seems like there's some news or events or people that just they disappear. They kind of slip off into the slipstream. A good example is I don't know if oh, awesome. Ziggy Shrug. She survived COVID. I'm really, really happy to hear that because her and her husband, I know were going through getting over COVID. I hope her husband came out okay as well. But so happy to hear that, Ziggy. That's awesome. That really, really rocks. Anyway, right around 9/11, I mean, 9/11 was so big that everything else disappeared. And I don't know if you know, but I do interviews with FBI agents, CIA agents, etc. I go both ways. I have a series criticizing the CIA and FBI and others, and I also interview them. So I like to think I'm pretty fair and open. But oh, good. Her husband is also much better. Thank you. I'm happy to hear that. I really am. One of the friends of the show is Jerry Williams, and she is a retired FBI agent and helped connect me to multiple FBI agents herself. I don't know why I am frozen on the screen. I hope my sound is good. Okay, that was very interesting. Anyway, one of Jerry's cases, and I plan to bring on the agent she had. She interviewed the agent who was covering this case. And it's very interesting because it kind of hit close or tangentially to me. Around 2000, 2001 in Kansas City, there was a pharmacist. And this guy was, all I can call him is evil. And he wanted to make some money. What would be a good way to make money as a pharmacist? Well, this guy was prescribing cancer medication. You know, it was coming to him in a clinic and stuff, and some of it was experimental, but it was all extraordinarily expensive. I mean, like mega expensive. Well, this bastard, and I don't know of a better way to put it. I mean, bastard's actually kindness. I mean, this is so evil. In order to get the money, he would swap out half the medication and give it out to the patients. So these patients were not getting their prescribed doses. Now, this kind of comes into effect of the show, sort of too. But Austin Peterson is somebody who I interviewed. I actually interviewed two of the 2016 Libertarian presidential candidates, Austin Peterson and John McAfee. Austin Peterson had a major grudge against regulatory commissions and everything else, and very specifically this doctor, because this doctor, not doctor, this pharmacist was the pharmacist for his mother. So he had a very, very personal thing, and she passed away. And what this guy did, his little fraudulent scam killed, God only knows. I don't know how many people. And it's sort of hard to track when, a lot of cancer patients are terminal anyway. But anyway, where I'm going with this and why it's significant is most of you have never heard of this. I've never heard of this. This case was so major that at the FBI, it actually got its own label. Like, have you ever heard of Unabomb? That's a major case. So whenever they have a major case, it has an official name. Well, I forgot what this case was, but it had an official name. It was that big. He was caught, convicted, put in prison. Everybody forgot. Nobody knows about him. Why does this matter? Well, do you remember last year when they were very concerned about COVID in prisons? This bastard, this same bastard, was almost released because they were shrinking the population due to COVID. So, what about Hunter Biden? Is that a major case? Depends on the day. If it's right before an election, no. Then it's invisible. Anyway, so it is astounding that these cases are out there, or things happen and then they get completely overlooked. And sometimes it matters. They all matter. Well, Eliot Smith was literally considered by many the voice of his generation. He was compared to Bob Dylan. And in 2003, apparently it was right around the time that Robert Blake got off, or was found not guilty for killing his wife. Well, Eliot Smith was found in his apartment by his girlfriend. She called 911. I will just say the only thing we know for sure is that Eliot Smith died from 2 stab wounds to his chest, and both of them would have been fatal. First one, fatal wound. Second one, fatal wound. There's a question whether it was suicide or not. And you have to admit, it is pretty difficult in the middle of the day to stab yourself in the heart twice. You might be a little, I don't know. After the first stab to the heart, you might feel a little tired. I would. I mean, honestly, I don't think I have the energy to, go ahead and spin up a second stab. But that is what's going on with Eliot Smith. We went over his life, and we are now talking about he died. We haven't gone into the details. Next week, it's all about the details. Coroner reports. I've got behavioral analysis that may be coming into effect because I actually have footage of her talking about him and what happened that day. It's rare footage of a documentary that was never released. So this case, which is still open, we're covering, and it fits the profile of America's untold stories. Why? Well, who's Eliot Smith? I never heard of him, but that's one hell of a story. And James Esparza, yes, you did miss something cool. I had this kick-ass new intro. It's a Halloween intro, and I decided to play it early because if I can, I might play it a couple more times. And that is a fun thing to do. And holy cow, I managed to burn up enough time that we have here the illustrious, the astounding, the brilliant soccer follower himself.
Mm. Yes. How you doing tonight?
All right, how's it going, man?
I'm doing all right. Just putting kids to bed and drinking tea, and it's just so the weekdays are sometimes the hardest days because it's just like you got so much to do before the next
God,
day
yes.
and then do it again. So
God, yes. Good to see you.
Thank you. Good to see you too.
Yeah, and okay, now this is going to be a hard episode for us because Nate and I have to be on good behavior. We have another show called No Holds Barred where we can say V words and Fauci juice and things like that, and not say the actual word on locals, unstructured.locals.com. So here we may find ourselves slipping into context. I was telling everybody about the new show, America's Untold Stories, and Eliot Smith and the case.
Oh yeah, the Eliot Smith case, the story that no one knows, but it's such a great story, right? I remember you.
It is. It really is, and I may be talking to a prosecutor out of New York who handled criminal cases to see what he thinks of autopsy reports. I don't know if I can only find one.
Oh, autopsy report. Well, you need to find somebody who dealt with homicides because I didn't do with homicides. They looked it up, but I've seen I think 2 autopsy reports, but.
You might see a third one.
Oh yeah. Well, no, to be honest with you, I've seen more, but not in a professional capacity. Like I had to look because that's just not what I do. Usually, if you're looking at an autopsy report, you're a detective in homicide or something like that. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah. I mean, you whatever crime you're doing, you're still dealing with the detective. I mean, aren't you guys partners?
Yeah. The detective. It all depends. Like the detectives would come and they would, if you need something, generally you're talking about like felonies, like robbery patterns, things of that nature, burglaries, felonies, things. It's they have a very distinct role because really the cops on the street just arrest people in the moment. So you're talking about those things like that, where the detectives are going to do the follow-up investigation to see if you got anything bigger or something like that.
Okay. Well, cool. Now I do not know if you have any stories, but I came prepped.
About what?
Well, it is, in this news, what the hell? It just
I don't know. I found this interesting Supreme Court case. All right, so let's do this. Let's go to you want to do William Shatner? Let's do William Shatner.
Yeah, well, because I like to start the show if I can with something funny, something fun, or something inspirational.
The oldest person ever to go did he go?
Yes.
Oh wow.
He went up and said he hopes he never recovers. And it was the most profound experience. And I mean, it's kind of perfect, isn't it? I mean, who's better than William Shatner to go to space at 90 years old? Wow. So it's like, first off, congrats, you made it to 90. There's an achievement there.
That's true.
And then go to space, and it's William Shatner, Captain Kirk.
It must be interesting to play. You play a role for so many years, right? He's been his whole life has been pretending he's been in space, and now he gets.
Oh well, no. Hold on. He was also T.J. Hooker. That was a very fine program.
When people see William Shatner, they're like, "That's T.J. Hooker." No, ain't nobody saying that.
Oh well,
most people know him for the.
I know that.
Even though it's that second big character. Don't get me wrong, he was good in T.J. Hooker, but ain't nobody calling him out for T.J. Hooker. Somebody put he looks 65. Yeah,
actually,
not a day over 70, right?
There's a show that he did. I think it's called Better Late Than Never on Hulu, and it was with him, Henry Winkler, George Foreman, Terry Bradshaw, and some dude they had as a sidekick who was younger. It is one of the funniest shows I have ever seen. It is a travelogue show with them like going to different places, and they're ridiculous, and it is hilarious.
What's the name of the show?
I think it's called Better Late Than Never. And it's literally the four of them hanging out and just it is so goofy. I cannot express how much I love that show. I think it's on Hulu, and it's just, it's so laid back. It's funny. You can watch it with your whole family, and it's just pure silliness because they're all characters. Like Henry Winkler, kind of, from what I've seen, is like the sweetest person on the planet. Terry Bradshaw is a goofball.
Yeah, I watched his show. His because now it seems like everybody's got a reality show, but he has one. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, I can't go that far. Okay, so
four-time Super Bowl MVP. I said, let me check. Well, not 2-time Super Bowl MVP, 4-time rings. I was like, let me check it out. But
no, I mean, hey, make fun of yourself. That's definitely a cool way to go. All right, so we went fun, inspiring, light, nice. Yeah, let's go the opposite. Boston Marathon was Monday. Perfect timing on this. Apparently, the Supreme Court justices are fighting about reinstating the death penalty for Sarnoff. I guess how you say it.
Yeah.
Have you seen or heard anything about that?
I'm not sure the legal reasoning behind this case. I don't. I have to look into it, but I don't know. Can you play that video? Or did the video lay it out? I like to see the reasoning about it or whatever.
Yeah, let's see. Please be fast.
When you get a chip in your windshield, trust Safe
Life. Safe Life. Safe Life Replay. Safe Life Replay.
Yeah, I know. Pre-rolls, you bastards.
We gotta wait the whole 30 seconds for this one. Like
I know. There's no courtesy skip, you jerks.
Now you gotta watch the whole thing, baby. We got bills to pay.
Agreed to review a lower court opinion that vacated the death sentence of Dzhokhar Tsarnaev. He is one of the brothers who carried out the 2013 Boston Marathon bombing that killed 3 people, injured hundreds, including 17 people who lost limbs in the attack. Let's go to our colleague Jessica Schneider. She joins us now. So, Jess, this is basically the lower court wiped away the death sentence as a possibility here for him. What does it mean that the Supreme Court will take it up? Does it mean they could reinstate it?
Well, what the lower court wanted to do here, Poppy, was really set up a new penalty phase for Dzhokhar Tsarnaev. So they said that the way that the penalty phase was done previously maybe had some issues with jury selection. So they want this to be redone, which essentially wipes away the death penalty that was already instated. It remains to be seen what he could face, but the Supreme Court will now decide whether or not he should redo that penalty phase of the trial, whether he can get another turn at sentencing here. What's interesting, though, is that the Trump administration was the one who was really pushing this decision, pushing for the Supreme Court to take up this case. And it'll be interesting to see how the Biden administration actually frames their arguments, given that the Trump administration was pushing hard here for the death penalty. Of course, as we...
Which is, okay, now consider this for a second. 2013, he was arrested and prosecuted under the Obama administration. Now, I don't know if this is a state case or not. That's something I'd have to look up because, you got terrorism aspects of it, but so I don't know how that would go. And interesting factoid about that. Did you know that Putin and Russia warned us about the brothers?
No. I remember that. Because they were part of like this Muslim militia over there. Yeah, I remember.
No, their names specifically. Watch out. There's something going on with these guys.
Yeah, no, because I know they were part of the like a militia over there that they were watching and stuff like that. Yeah.
Anyway, so he's prosecuted, sentenced to death, and all that during the Obama administration. Then you have the Trump administration, and we're in another one. So we've overlapped an entire presidency to the other side, and it's very interesting. I guess Kavanaugh and Kagan. I want to say Kavanaugh and Kagan went at it a little bit, even though when I read it, it's like. That's going at it, but I guess it's that lawyer talk. Like,
it seems to me a couple of things, and this is again, I haven't read anything up on it, but if we're talking about the Supreme Court death penalty, this has to be a federal case. So we're talking about, he has to be brought up on federal charges because this was a state case.
Well, Supreme Court can overturn a state death penalty. They do it all the time, right?
But it all depends on for various rounds though. And this one is saying the lower court. This is saying, I don't know, because in this death penalty case, it's about the penalty phase, whether the penalty phase was correct. Maybe I'm assuming this got to be some type of federal case. I'm thinking that they prosecuted him federally. But the one thing that's interesting is that they're not really trying to overturn the conviction. So everyone understands in law, a case is actually really two separate procedures within
Guilt
one
or innocence
action.
and penalty, right?
Yeah, so you have the usually people call it the liability or guilt phase, and then you have the penalty phase. So, and it's interesting because even the evidence that can be presented for both is different. So, for instance, where hearsay evidence and propensity evidence is not allowed in the penalty phase, and whether you're you have guilt or innocence, it is allowed in the penalty phase, and in the phase in which they find out, how much time you're going to get. So, for instance, in a famous sexual assault cases, in which this happened, where they couldn't show that the person had done this 20 times in the past, but then when the person was found guilty, then they were able to show that, hey, look, this person has 20 other times that this person has done it, through that evidence.
Which I think is fair. I think that's perfectly fair, because one, it doesn't necessarily mean he did or did not, but the second means, okay, this guy does this crap all the time. It's going to be a factor in your decision. Hold on, before we go too far, though, the tradition, what happens with my channel on YouTube all the time. So guess what, folks? It's that time. And by the way, my show earlier tonight, I came up, I was spending time with the wife when I finished it before doing this. That one was yellow too. Thank you very much, YouTube. I was talking to a survivor of Nexium. Absolutely not, controversial anyway. Didn't do anything. Nope. Hell with that.
And it kills you. So like a lot of people don't understand how yellow kills you, but it really kills you. Oh, Emily's here. What's going on?
Hey, good to see you. Emily, check your DMs on Twitter.
Yeah, it's crazy, but you got to work with these mundane YouTube rules, and it's just
I know that, but
really tough.
That's part of why I have another channel.
Yeah.
I mean, I'll see how it goes, but so far it's not political. Okay, YouTube, if you're listening, other channel, we're talking about Eliot Smith. He's a kind rock star. Had a bad thing happen to him. Don't punish me for that,
Eric. I do have to say one thing though. You are now holding me up, because Eric told me this last minute, right? So I put the kids to bed, and I got the Real Housewives on record because I want to see them go after Eric and Jane. So I got to watch that tonight, Eric, because I'm going to watch the Real Housewives tonight. Now, not because I'm just such a fan, but I need to see how my man goes. My man, what's the guy's name? How he goes at Eric and Jane tonight, the announcer. So they got the reunion. I got to see it. Yeah, I got to see it. I recorded it. I'm like, I got to watch this tonight. Eric is holding me back from it. So yeah, I'm watching the Real Housewives.
So are you trying to say that you are a true friend, Nate? Because you're going to sacrifice.
I am. Ask Emily. Is Emily still in the chat? Ask Emily. Was tonight's episode good? Andy, yes. But that was it. I hear the episode tonight was fire. Oh.
Okay. So I hope I'm not holding you both up.
No.
Kind of proud if I am. I'll be honest. Hey, my ego can be pumped every once in a while.
You're holding me back from the Housewives, and yes, so I watch it, but it's because my wife watches it, and I've even watched the damn. They have a documentary on her and her husband stealing from the people. It's crazy.
By the way, this is how you know Nate is so truthful. He's not even doing the whole, I got to watch it with the wife, or she gets really upset or anything. He's like, oh, I want to check this out.
Yeah, no.
I drag her ass in here to watch this. Never mind that. And she's like, we have to, Nate.
Listen, I'll say this. I don't watch every episode like the Atlanta Housewives of Georgia, but I do watch them, though. I watch like the good, like the reunions and some of the hot shows. Like I watch them. So a Hustler and the Hustler and the Housewife. Yeah. Okay. Oh my God.
You know what? Somebody should have told me the story before about. I meant to talk to you about the Loudoun County and the FBI investigating that, but I didn't have a story pulled. It's just beyond rubbish. But I figure, you know what, Nate? We always talk about race all the time. It's like, the black, the white, and da 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 da. So here, let's make Nate uncomfortable. John Gruden. How do you feel?
I believe he's a racist and he should be fighting. Let me tell you how I really feel. Right? Okay, number one, I feel like I always have to say this: racism exists. It's a bad thing, and people, and I understand. I have been discriminated against in the past. I understand what racism is because I lived in the Deep South for a short amount of time, so it happens, right? But
Hold on, this is an important question. Sorry to interrupt you. Is that a toothbrush in your cup?
Yes. I just brushed my teeth in that. Well, it's a baby spoon. You know why? These baby spoons are so good at being like the perfect size to like stir everything up without like the quickly and clink. And it tells you when the coffee's too hot, and it's like perfect. It's like perfect. This spoon, it changes color. So when my daughter stopped using them, I was like, well, you know what? I still like them. So
Okay, so we'll get back to racism from color to
no, but let me get back to this though. The problem is that all right. So when I first saw the first email of John Gruden, he was like, "Oh, this guy's got big lips." So I looked at it. I didn't even know. I was like, "What's wrong with him saying the guy's got big lips?" Right? I was like, I say that again. About what's matter of fact, one of the people who Lisa Rinna, she's on Real Housewives reunion tonight. So she has monster lips, but she happens to be white. So when I saw that, I was like, oh man, well, it could, whatever, right? And then they said it was like 10, 11 years ago. So I'm like, really? This guy's got to be fired for an 11-year-old email where he said somebody has big lips? Really? That's where we're at now,
Yeah, no, they're bringing up Randy Moss crying on television. This
cried over an 11-year-old email?
No,
lying.
This is Sharpie Gate Randy Moss, right? The guy who loved to write on the football, and this smug kind of spiking football asshole. They got rules changed in the football. Oh,
I don't believe he cried. Are you guys got to be lying.
Yeah, he did.
Cry.
Yeah, he did. Yeah,
you got to show me a clip of that. Come on, there's no way any reasonable person is crying over 10-year emails. Come on. I honestly just don't believe it. That's something that you got to see for yourself.
Hold on, Randy Moss crying on ESPN. I will.
This is real. This is not a night, like not a joke.
Hold on. Yeah.
Over an email from 10 years ago. Hold on. So this is over the email from 10 years ago.
I hear you saying basically, if you were in that locker room today, you kind of just put your head down and you think of him as the leader in terms of the decision maker, but not necessarily a leader you respect. I'm curious from your perspective,
she's cute.
Randy, if you were in that locker room today, would you be able to play for him?
To speaking to Teddy's point, basically you hear us talk about we got work to do. We got.
I don't have time for this, man. You got to give me the.
And Teddy hit it right on the head of
what did Teddy say?
Down and going playing football. I speak about the game of football. I fell in love with the game of football since I was 6 years old, and I get emotional talking about it because of
talking about football.
Like this. My civil rights were kind of messed with in high school over the color of my skin, and now being able to play 14 years in the National Football League. To have something like this of a leader. We talk about leadership. We give guys these big contracts because they want to be able to lead 70 men, coaches, equipment staff, and managers to the number one goal, and that's to win the championship. And for us to be moving back and not forward in 21st century, like I said, man.
Moving back, the emails were 10 years ago.
The clock is.
We've moved forward since then.
No,
I can play for you, but I'd rather not. Okay.
Oh my God.
Look at him. He's not crying. He's about 3/4 of the way there, dude.
Yo. I just pray nobody looks at my past emails from 10 years ago. Oh my God. The things I said, I'm definitely going to get kissed. I got no hope if they, this is crazy. and he's just being, Tony Dungy said it wasn't racist. It was immature, but it wasn't racist. It
was a locker room. It was locker room talk, right?
Well, I don't know about, the Trump locker room talk. I grab him by the leg. I don't know about that.
We know you voted for Biden. He's a story coming up.
I don't know about that. When we say locker room talk, there's levels to the game. But
somebody said that was Terrell Owens. I don't know. I don't follow football.
I don't know.
All I know is that I looked up the Randy Moss, and they were talking about that.
That's embarrassing, though. This email was 10 years ago, right? 10. And then number two, at what point can someone make a mistake because they got Chris Rock? That's why I'm going to say it. That's why when they're after Dave Chappelle now because of the things he said. And I'm like, hold on. You're after Dave Chappelle. Have you seen the Dave Chappelle controversy of the last couple of his last thing? Right?
Yeah, so
they want to cancel him, right?
Yeah.
But Dave Chappelle has said some crazy stuff in the past, right? Like, for instance, Michael Jackson's accusers, he didn't. He says, I don't believe him. And then
he's the one who said, everybody heard of Jussie Smollett?
No. I'm talking about. He said a lot of worse things than what he said on that thing. Like he's like, you're talking about not believing the victims. Oh yeah, he straight up said, I don't believe him. And you know what else he said? You don't get free. Those kids should know you don't get free trips to Hawaii for nothing, right? That's kind of outrageous stuff for somebody to say. And he wasn't canceled for that, but now he's going to be canceled for this. Like, come on, who's picking and choosing why we canceling people? This is
I got
ridiculous.
a great idea. How about see if you agree with this? Everybody who is virtue signaling and griping about whatever's going on, Gruden, Chappelle, whatever. How about we audit all of their emails and all their Twitter accounts for say 12 years and bring them forth in the hopper and let's see how everybody does. What do you think? I mean, they want to criticize, they want to cry, they want to gripe. How about we pull all theirs too? And you know what? And as we surface things, then maybe attitudes towards other people will, temper down a little bit.
I think people want perfect people, right? You want to know that everybody is so pure. It's almost like the Jesus complex. They want people to be perfect like Jesus was perfect. That ain't happening, right? It's not possible. And I'm just going to be honest and say, I've said things that I'm ashamed of saying. There was one time, I'll say this, one time I remember I was in college and I ordered some Chinese food and we're in the hood. So guess what? I saw a guy on a bicycle, happened to be Asian, with a bag of what looked like Chinese food. And I said, hey guy, hey, is that Chinese food? I'm right here. I ordered it. He said, yeah, this Chinese food's for me. Now, it was embarrassing, but I didn't do it because I was some racist against Asian people. I did it because I've had conscious unbiased. Now, I understand.
Or there's the fact that we've talked about this too.
Mm-hmm.
There were some neighborhoods that if, shall we say, somebody white shows up, you're going to pop them because they shouldn't be in that neighborhood and they're probably there buying drugs.
Yeah. Well, it's something unusual to the neighborhood, which is true. But I do understand that sometimes and that's the thing with unconscious bias. Sometimes you just can't assume.
Is that a bias or a deduction? Hold on now. Is that a bias or a deduction? Let me see. If I am in a law firm and I'm expecting something by a messenger, and some guy on a bicycle is going nutty through traffic and heading my way, and I go, "Are you the messenger?" Now, am I being biased to people on bicycles who are reckless in traffic, or am I using a little bit of deductive reasoning?
All right. So if the person is being biased in traffic and race doesn't have to play a factor, then yes. But this guy, it wasn't because he was, walking crazy. The guy was a regular guy with just a bag of Chinese food, right? My unconscious bias saw an Asian person and associated an Asian person in this particular space with that bag being that. So that's what I'm talking about, unconscious bias, because if that person was white and he had the same bag, then I wouldn't have thought the same thing. But even in your example, if the person was white, black, Hispanic, whatever, you could still make that same deduction. So that's why I believe in your example, it's not an unconscious bias. But with my example, it is in that sense of, it was because of his race. That's why I came to that conclusion. And that's what, like, sometimes like it happens in hospitals all the time. Doctors, for instance, it was a training that when I was at not the law department, where was at the Department of Investigations, but they had this training in which a doctor, right? Doctors would go to African American or black or minority women who were giving birth. and always offer them WIC. Like, hey, you guys want WIC, and WIC is for those of you who don't know, WIC is like a welfare program.
Milk and cheese and
exactly
that program, right? Yeah.
But then for white families, they weren't offering the WIC even to white families who happened to be qualified for WIC, right? And that was because of their unconscious bias. They just assumed all black people or minorities needed it, and they assumed that. So they were hurt in both
it's funny
in both perspectives. And it was just, but it was an unconscious bias. And now they just offer it to everybody, so they don't have that issue. Go ahead.
Right, but that doesn't. Okay, one, that wouldn't mean that the bias isn't there. They just offer it to everybody, so their ass is covered.
Yeah, exactly.
But I would say again, though, I don't know. I don't know if it's bias or it's stereotyping. And stereotyping and bias, I don't know if you say they're the same thing or not, but there is a factor. It's like, okay, well, if 9 out of 10 people that meet these parameters walking through the door are this, you're probably there may be odds in your favor. So it can be insulting, it can be cruel, but there are times like, okay, I'll give you a generalization. I'll probably get thrown off of YouTube for it, but I'm generally not going to ask any black friends I've ever met in the military to go swimming with me. And I've been proven pretty right on that. There's been a couple, so obviously not everybody, but like everybody, not everybody, the majority of people I've met in the Army make it very clear, I don't swim. And I don't know why, it's a cultural thing or whatever else. Now this becomes a factor too, because we had to do training. So I knew this firsthand because I was training in the CO.
And
we were on a show.
But it's interesting because your experiences, because that's what happens. Your experiences lead to your subsequent actions, right? This for a sec, but and that honestly happens to be true. It happens to be true that African Americans usually there's that.
Yes, for those of you who don't know, I have a ton of blind spots.
For those of you who don't know, when it comes to drowning and swimming accidents, African Americans are more likely to drown or die because we live in cities, in urban areas, and there's really not like a lot of opportunities for us to learn how to swim. So, for instance, if you live in New York, there's not a lot of swimming pools that you really have access to in New York. So that's why if you live in more rural areas or in the country, you're more likely to learn how to swim at a younger age. So what you're saying, it's interesting because I think,
and by the way, I would,
but it's actually true in society that's actually
right. And I would acknowledge this too. I would acknowledge a reason that it may be too is that blacks were heavily affected by racism and not allowed in pools.
Yes, that's true too.
And so you have a generational problem where if the parents don't ever learn, they kind of avoid it with their kids, especially if they've had a bad experience at a pool, and then that might run down, and you could see an echo of previous generations. So I'm not saying that it's good or bad. I'm just saying there are some things out there, and it's And so while you're saying it's unconscious bias, I don't know. I'm going to say it was really deductive reasoning too. I mean, somebody Asian, they're carrying a bag. It looks like a food bag. Whatever. If there's anybody carrying the food bags and nobody else, or it's unusual in the area, I'd be like, oh, that's probably mine. I mean, if they were carrying a pizza box, I'd assume it was them, and they didn't have to be Italian.
Well, I honestly though, and I'm just being honest with myself, I just put 2 and 2 together, and when I saw Asian, it just really just that was the kicker for me. If he happened to be black, I didn't order any black food. I ordered Asian food. So maybe again, I might get canceled for this, but that's the honest truth. But I can recognize that, and then from that point on, I try not to make that mistake. But I think I agree with you though. It's really deductive reasoning. But now, it's if you do that, now you're
but here's the problem. I'm only saying that because, there's a movie called Dave with Kevin Kline.
Mm-hmm. I think I've seen that movie before.
It's hilarious. No, not Dave. Sorry, it's called In and Out. Another one with Kevin Kline. I love Dave with Kevin Kline. I love In and Out with Kevin Kline, and it's where he was a history teacher, and one of his students got an Academy Award for playing a homosexual character in a movie. And when the student, he got it together, his girlfriend, everybody's all around, and then the student goes and accepts the award, and he goes, I'd like to dedicate this award to my teacher, Mr. I don't know his name, but Mr. Smith, let's just say, okay, who's gay. And Kevin Klein's like,
oh yeah, I think that's
because he didn't know that he was gay. And you know, and it was a hilarious movie in a way because yeah, Tom Selleck was gay in it, without a mustache, which looked very odd at the time. And it had a funny sequence where he was listening to a masculinity tape, and he's like going, and he's listening to it, and he goes like this, and the tape goes, "What are you, a little teapot?" And he straightens out. But anyway, where I'm going with this is that there's one of the characters in there, and it's John Cusack's sister, and she goes to hit on somebody and finds out they're gay, and then she goes, "Is everybody gay?" Well, that's kind of how I kind of feel that way about racism and stuff. It's like, is everybody a racist? No, they're probably not.
It's you know what it is? It's just like now with transphobia, with the LGBTQR plus, like there's 2 S's now and a plus. I don't know.
That's
you know,
right,
there's a lot of letters in that thing. But I think it's an overcorrection in the market. And I think that's what's going on. And let's just be clear. For a long time, from let's say, you know, even from the 70s and the 80s, you know, I remember in Jamaica, they were proud to say they actually hunted down and killed gay people and in Africa. And and we're going from that in the 80s to now, you know, people, you know, them having just the right to marry, the right to just be open and free, which I wanted to
I celebrate. Good.
Yeah.
Move on.
But what I'm saying is that it's like sometimes I feel like we're stuck between two worlds. One world is saying it's just as bad as it, like for instance with racism. People saying it's just as bad as it was in the 1950s. Not true, right? Just absolutely not true. But then you got one side that says we live in a race utopia and it doesn't, you know, racism doesn't exist anymore and we're all good. And that's just not true either, right? I think the truth of the matter is we've come really far. I always say, if you know, United States is the best country on earth to be in as a black man. No doubt about it. I don't care wherever you put me in Canada, wherever. I think here is the most opportunity, the best place on the planet you can be if you're a black. If you were born in America, you are already 3 steps ahead of everybody else. But with that said, doesn't mean we can't do better, and that means we can't right some of the wrongs of the past. But how do we get to and I think the argument isn't that those wrongs in the past happened. It's just how do we correct them in a way that's fair for everybody, in a way that's fair for the people who didn't do those things, right? Because the people who are alive today aren't those slave owners in the past. But then to recognize that the people who are alive today, whose families were slaves in the past, how do we make it so their suffering from back then doesn't continue on? Just like in your example with the whole with the it's like your previous example where their parents didn't swim and
that's all
their grandparents didn't swim, and then next thing you know, but it's the same thing with economics and the same thing with mobility with it. What's it called?
Upward mobility.
And it's just simple. Like my parents didn't have a house, so I didn't have a house to inherit. Where if I was white, I would likely have a house, and that house would be
maybe
$300,000. No, but if you look at the average wealth of a white family versus the average wealth of a black family, you can see the massive difference.
You get averages gets screwy when you get into the actual numbers, because then we've already talked about it that there's more poor white people than there are entire black people total.
Yeah,
they weren't inheriting shit either. So
we're talking, but
that's why I say class.
But we're talking about there's an aggregate piece of it. Yeah, there are more white people than black people, but then there's a percentage of it too, right? The percentage of black people who are poor versus the percentage of white people who are poor, and that's astronomically tilted one way. And then you can also say, just also with home buying and generational wealth and past, like you can average it out. That's why, for instance, when you talk about crimes in New York City versus crimes in rural America, they average it out and say per capita per 100,000,
which they should do.
This is it. And that makes sense, because
that's why Little Rock, Arkansas was like the worst place in the country at one point, and it moved on. By the way, I live in Hampton, Virginia, and we're in the top 100 safest small cities. Kind of a win. There's a lot of small cities. I'll take it. And Virginia Beach, which is also here, is like 38 for large cities. So that's not too bad.
Well, hey, I'm in New York and it's rough over here, but it's not that bad.
You're not in Chicago, dude.
It's funny. One of the and Chicago's not. I don't think not even in the top 10. One of the things I always found funny though is the gentrification issue here in New York, and I think it's the weirdest catch-22 ever.
Oh yeah, where it's like you ghettoize it and you're evil, or you clean it up and you're kicking out minorities. Is that it?
Yeah, because it happened. All right, there's a zip code here in Manhattan that this happened to, and it's right next to this like Central Park North, which is a very rich neighborhood, one of the richest neighborhoods in the city. And then it's like right next to the border, it's on the border of one of the poorest neighborhoods in the city. And for years that neighborhood had been predominantly black. Like 80% of that neighborhood would be black, while the white neighborhood was like 80% white. So it was right, and it was like literally the borderline in the street. And the thing that kept it separated was just property. You know how much a rent on this side of the street was $3,000, and rent on the other side was like $500. So that's kind of what separated it. But so what the city of New York did was say, okay, for this poor neighborhood, we're going to increase police presence. We're going to improve the schools. We're going to do all this stuff because this is a predominantly black, and we want to make sure this neighborhood gets better and improves. So they invested all this money. Crime went down, like flatline crime. Giuliani came in, crime went down on that. This neighborhood had some of the best schools, not in just the city, but in the state of New York. They put some of the best schools with the best test scores, right? Everything is bloom. Property values went up, right? Property values went up because now people they were like, let's go live there now, right? Because
only one thing missing now: black people.
Well, black people were there, but two things happened. Now, you can't blame everything on the market. Number one, black people owned for the places that they owned within there. For instance, my co-op in this neighborhood went from $13,000 to $400,000, right? Over a 15-year period. So I moved in, I put it for 13, and now we're leaving out, and people are offering us $400,000 for it.
Ooh, nice.
So a lot of those people sold. They were like, yo, we're going to sell, right? We can sell now for these huge amounts. And they left this hood to go to another hood.
That's a market thing.
So people who are moving in happen to be white, middle class. What are you looking for? You're looking for good schools, good, low crime. You're looking for a great place, plenty of public transportation. So that's what happened to Harlem. All these people started moving in and raising the quality of life. And then unfortunately, those people who now were paying $400 or $500 a month for rent couldn't pay like $2,000 a month for rent, which is the going price. So they had to move further uptown. So it was success that bred this problem.
Partly, but I got to point out something that I just thought of.
Go ahead.
There are rich black people.
Yes.
Why weren't they moving in? Why weren't they going into this nice improved area that had been fixed up? Why didn't they go move it? You're talking about, whites had been moving in and brought up the property value. Well, there are blacks in New York that have money, right? Yes. Why didn't they move into a predominantly black area and help bring up the value? I'm just asking this question legitimately. Where were they?
I think it's a misnomer just to think because a community and like that zip code in Harlem is like over 200,000 people. So to keep a community like that up, I understand you probably, because if you even watch some of the shows, you do have some predominantly well-off black people who move to these neighborhoods, but I don't think you have enough to where you could just say, hey, we're just going to keep it all black, right? Because the market is what it is. If I'm a black person, like for instance, a lot of the black people who are well-off in those neighborhoods, in those brownstones, what they would do is, I'm offering an apartment for $500. Now, two things I can't do. I can't, number one, discriminate just based on race, right? I only want black people in it, even though you could technically do it, but you can't really do it, right? You have to, there's housing laws and there's discrimination laws. Sure. And number two is, why am I going to charge, let you pay, if you can only pay $500 and somebody comes in and says, I can give you $2,000, and that person happens to be right, I'm going to take that. I don't disagree. It was those black property owners who were, number one, taking the money, taking those people, those new white people in, and selling their properties to these rich white developers. So it wasn't the fact that I think rich black people did come in, but it just wasn't enough to sustain it because you have a whole marketplace. You know what I'm saying? There's so many.
I have
apartments.
a feeling that there's more to it, and this is, and I could be wrong on it. You know, I've read different cultural pieces on that, but is it possible that there are wealthy, upwardly striving blacks who wanted to leave black areas?
It's possible.
And I'm not, I'm not. It's like there's so much complexity to it that, okay, you have people. I'm going to guess that a lot of the whites who are moving in there were like probably moving up and into there. Like it was getting nice, and
a little
more well, they could get more. I mean, there's a reason that they went in.
Yeah,
then it's a garden paradise. They made it a garden paradise.
I will tell you exactly why they started moving in, because I was there during the whole transition from, where you're the crack addicts on the street corner to now it's like, where you have a mix of white, black, everybody walking around the streets. I see white people jogging in the park. That's the neighborhood is totally different than when it was 20
I like
years
that.
ago.
That's integrated. Sounds good.
Yes, it is integrated, and it's been fantastic. It's phenomenal. But the reason why is because in New York we have for everybody doesn't know the what happens in New York, we have a housing shortage in which there are just not enough apartments for people who are seeking the apartments. That's why the rents are so high here in New York. But in poor neighborhoods, that the rents were just lower. So what happens is there was like this border, more or less, for safety. So if you wanted to have a safe environment to send your kids to a decent school, you would kind of stay in the richer neighborhoods or the neighborhoods of the upper middle class neighborhoods, Upper East Side, so forth and so forth. So people didn't really go to like places like Harlem, Bed-Stuy, and the South Bronx, because those were rough neighborhoods. Even though the rents were cheaper, it's just very high crime and things of that nature. When the gentrification started happening, the people from downtown started first. You started seeing like some people just saying, hey, let me see these apartments uptown, because they were just so cheap. And then when you go to an apartment uptown, you're like, my God, the apartment is huge. You're getting like triple the square footage for half the price.
You get more for less.
It was just
that's exactly what I said. But the people who were doing it,
go ahead.
The people who were doing it were not on the rich end, because the rich could already afford all that. They were the upwardly strivers too. So, white, black, whoever it was going in there, I'm guessing they were moving up into there because they could get more for their money.
Yes, I agree.
And then the value compensated accordingly. That's all I was saying is
I thought you were saying they were moving up, like they were poor where they were at and moving up. But
no,
I kind of saw it as like, I remember it was funny because when I was in law school, like a couple of guys at the law school, I was like, where you guys living? They're like, we're in Harlem. I'm like, you're in Harlem? We're in Harlem. They were like, we're like 140th in Harlem. I'm like, what the hell are you doing on 140th? They're like, yo, we got like this monster apartment with this, and it was all like, I'm like, wow. So it was cheap, it was this, and they didn't care. They were young, they like to party all night, so they were up in the middle of Harlem. And I was
just in Pittsburgh, and I saw that where I was like, if I had a lot of extra money in my hands, there's like an area, where all the steel workers were or whatever, and the buildings are going, kind of dilapidated or things. So I'm like, oh, you could buy all that. You could probably get them to pay you to take it.
Yeah.
And then, clean it up and build it up, and it'll turn into this just super nice area. So, I mean, that's the market. I mean, it is.
It's the market. It's a beautiful thing for the market, but I think there's just so much stuff going on. It's just like, it's the fact of the matter is, you do want to make it's and that's why I said it's a catch-22. You want to make those neighborhoods good. You want to make them safe. You want to make, but then by doing so, the people who are in those neighborhoods who don't own those properties they get priced out. And then the people who generally own the property, they usually sell so they can get priced out. Because like I'll say, I remember there was a building not too far from my co-op where they sold the building for like $50 million. But everybody who owned an apartment in that building got like $1 million. So it was like, we're out of here. We love it. They're so good. But those are all black families who, guess what? They were taking their money and going someplace else. So that,
hopefully the next place they go will move up a little bit too. I do believe in, the whole abundance philosophy, if possible, or, it's like any neighborhood improving is a good thing.
Oh yeah.
Even if you have other ones, well, you know what? They might have gotten pushed out, but maybe they went to another bad neighborhood and brought that up because they got extra money for the property they had in their area, and so everybody is potentially moving. I don't know.
Well, I don't know. If I got $1 million, I'm moving to the hood. I'm out the hood, baby. I don't know if you ever watched that movie. It was like, when I cut my check, I'm gone, and I'm going.
The Jeffersons? Oh, sorry.
No. The Jeffersons is show. Movie's Friday after next. He was like, the guy was like, when I cut my check, I was gone. I'm out the hood. So I don't know.
All right. Well, while we're getting depressed, let's talk about your boy.
Biden's approval rating.
Yeah, apparently it just keeps plummeting, man. I wonder what could be happening.
What is his approval rating?
Oh, geez. I think his disapproval rating's 51 now.
Well, it's like, wasn't Trump never had an approval rating over 50, right? So it's like I
don't think so.
Yeah, it's like it's the political. Maybe it's good. It's good to see it drop a little bit, but
a little bit, dude. It's so bad that the Democrats are saying, "Oh, we got a problem."
You know, no, I think it's a problem for the upcoming election in November.
Oh, here we go.
38%. Oh,
38%.
I think it's a problem going into the election, but a 38% approval rating 2 years before your re-election campaign, I don't think he has too much to worry about. I know, because those numbers fluctuate so much. You know, fluctuate so much. What was Trump's lowest approval rating? Do you know? It had to be in the 30s, because I remember one time it was like really low.
It's lower than Hunter's credit score.
Yeah. Well, when you're the president's son, that's all she wrote.
Oh God, that is too funny. I don't know. Trump's is, I want to say, probably 39 to 42.
Yeah, it's just they go up and they go down. It's like, you know, but maybe it's good for the politics of it. Yeah, he's got a bad credit score, but it's like, all
right, 43.
What? Trump's lowest?
I guess that's
maybe. I remember it was in the 30s a couple of times now, but it could be. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. Well, it might have been at this point in the presidency is 43.
Yeah, because I remember, what's his name? Obama had like a horrible one after his first 2 years. I remember they flipped the whole house and all that. They flipped the house, the Senate, everything. They flipped everything after Obama's first 2 years. So, but then he won re-election. So that's what I'm saying. Bad poll numbers a year and what is he? He just got sworn in last year. So yeah, so it's
all right. I have interviewed Rich Bears. He's actually been on News with Booze before too. So
Rich, I haven't seen Rich in a while.
No, Nate actually was debating Rich on this channel. Oh, yeah, I know Rich. Jeez.
Oh yeah, Rich is amazing. Rich is good. I like Rich.
Rich is an amazing dude. And
oh yeah. I like hey, Rich is a numbers guy. I like people who dive into the numbers.
Well, that's why I brought him on with you, because you had your pinned tweet, and I was like, okay, let me bring somebody on to just talk to you, and get in the weeds, because I can't. And I'm not going to. As a matter of fact, I sent something to Nate earlier. I don't know if you saw that, but it does substantiate my argument that the emergency authorized medications are not covered by the fund.
Yeah, but I thought we both agreed with that before, right?
No, but I found it in writing.
I believed you when you said it before. I was like, okay.
Well, I was speculating.
Okay. I thought you knew. I was like, yeah, but that makes sense, because it did make sense. But you found it. Yeah. Cool. Yeah, but anyway, see, I don't know. This thing is, I don't know. This whole, I don't know. Like even Kyrie, he came out today and what did he say? Supposedly someone on his behalf. They said that he's holding back because he wants to, have a voice for the voiceless when it comes to vaccine things. So I'm like, I don't know. That's a little, if you don't want to take it, I would rather him respect him and say, listen, I just don't want to take it, blah, 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 instead of this whole, cloak and dagger piece of it. It's like, just say you don't want to take it. I respect that.
All right. So on a happier note, it's probably safer on YouTube. Gabby Petito. Cause of death.
Strangulation.
Yeah, it's been released. I guess it was controversial. Some homicide people were saying that they shouldn't have released it, that they should just said, well, okay, one thing I found interesting, did you know that her body was like 3 weeks old?
Yeah, but you know what, though? If you look at everything now, and because as soon as I saw this, my mind went back to like being an investigator, right? I was like, okay, so now I start putting everything together. Number one, when you talk about string, I'm assuming soon as the cops found her body, they saw strangulation because it's like generally clear. Okay, bones broken in there. You walk in and you get the. Hey, what do you think it is? Hey, it looks like It looks like strangulation.
Well, usually
I won't know. Yeah, I won't know until I get this. But the bones. Sure. So they probably knew already.
The highway bum.
Yeah. So then they probably said, okay, so we got a possible strangulation case. How do we get this guy from running? And that's probably why they did the whole credit card thing because if you think about it, 3 weeks, they probably saw, okay, the credit card thing was like 2 weeks later. So so if they're assuming she was dead 3 weeks ago, then 2 weeks later he's using her credit card. That's what will let them know, okay, because he probably then had to know she was dead, right? Because he used her credit card like 2 weeks later.
Not necessarily.
Yeah. Well, I'm saying
it means that he had her credit card. I mean, he had the van too.
And he was the last person seen with her. It's like,
well, I mean, I'm not going to say it looks good for him, but I'm just saying, in terms of proof, well, he could have stolen the van and the credit card. Said, "Oh, hell with you," shoved her out and drove off with all that. I don't know.
Oh yeah.
I'm sure. I'm not going to say that. I'm not defending the guy. It's very, very likely that he's.
What you're saying is the evidence is just not conclusive, and I understand that. I'm just saying, based on just my experience, what I'm thinking happened is that they got into the argument because again,
but releasing that, I can see where the detective was saying, "Hey, you shouldn't have released it. Should have just said it's badly." Well, maybe because they want to see if he confesses if they ever get him, and the more information that he can reveal that isn't already out there, because according to the detective, there just ain't that much. Okay, now she's strangled, but with the decomposition and the vehicle and everything gone, and he was smart. Whatever you want to say, Laundrie was smart and just shut up and went straight to a lawyer. Never answered anything. So it's like
you can build a circumstantial case, though. I'm not saying it's easy, but you can still build a circumstantial case. I don't know what they have. I know they have They have a woman who was strangled, her boyfriend who was in a domestic, and we know for a fact a lot of these domestic cases. I know where I'm looking at, but I don't know how they're going to build the case. But because just so people know, when you have a lot of these DV cases, a lot of them entangle strangulation. Where
I mean that's
so that's just like
if there's no weapon
thing
nearby, it's the most common,
and that's kind of where you get this. So that's why when you see domestic violence with her and the cops, and they get the cops called on them, then you're going to she died from strangulation. It's all adding up. It's like the OJ case. It all adds up: domestic abuse, and eventually to a homicide. But again, we're not sure he killed her. But
no, hold on, Nate. Good case to bring up. Just like who?
Just like OJ.
Yeah. Who was found not guilty. So anyway.
Yeah. But I don't think
it's a very interesting example.
I'm not saying he's going to be found guilty. I don't know. But only thing I say is that usually the same way the evidence kind of built upon itself in the OJ cases, the same way it's building upon itself here, and the same way it builds upon itself in a lot of these DV cases. But with OJ, I don't know if Brian Laundrie's going to have the dream team, but maybe he might need it. I don't know.
Well, here's the other thing. And a lot of people are saying, how the hell is he still out there? And I'm sitting here going, well, there's precedent for that. Do you remember Eric Rudolph?
No.
Okay, well, Eric Rudolph is famous because he was the Atlantic City. He was the Olympics bomber in Atlanta. Remember the FBI charged the wrong guy? Richard,
yes, I remember.
I think it was Richard Jewell. And then they finally had to let him go. He was a security guard who was there, and they shockingly, the FBI, got the wrong guy, hemmed it up and all that. Anyway, he was released. Well, Eric Rudolph was found to do it. Eric Rudolph was on the lam until like 2003. It was years.
Well, look at the mobster they caught, right? The mobster they caught. He was on the lam for like 50 years. The guy
yes. But Eric Rudolph was in the wild. Much like Brian Laundrie. Dude, I'm saying it's a precedent for a reason.
Yeah.
It's like, yes, I know that James the Boston mafioso, Whitey Bulger. I know that Whitey Bulger was on the lam for a long time, but he also, remember, an FBI agent went to prison for him. Whitey Bulger was an FBI informant. Whitey Bulger probably had some help from some corrupt officials, just a guess, allegedly. I said allegedly, in my opinion. Anyway, Eric Rudolph was the lamb in the wild. Now he may have had some help, to picking dumpsters or whatever. I don't know, but Laundrie is kind of a survivalist type, apparently. I do think it looks bad that his parents probably helped him go off somewhere where he's not naturally being found.
Oh, but I'm honestly,
or he could be dead.
It's going to be hard for me to not think that he didn't know that this woman was dead, because all his actions disagree. All his actions just seem just too convenient. He left the car. He goes home. He's hitchhiking without her. She strangled to death.
Awful. It looks awful.
If he didn't kill her, then he's doing a hell of an impression of a guy who did. Right? It's just like it's like you can't get any closer than this. But
yeah, he's doing the best job since Scott Peterson.
But it's not what you know; it's what you can prove.
I know, and that's the thing, and I just wanted to point out the whole on the lamb thing and Eric Rudolph, because I keep hearing, I don't know why they haven't caught him yet. I don't know. It's like, it's possible somebody can live in the wild for a while, and if they know what they're doing, why not?
That must be one hell of a life, though, to live out there. But you can do it though.
This is a guy who wanted to live off the road in a van with his girlfriend, and he's already a little.
That's true.
I mean, and by the way, you want to know life. Here's a hell of a life. Ted Kaczynski, the Unabomber. I brought him up earlier, right? Well, did you see where he lived?
Yeah, but Ted is a different type of case, though. That's the type of cat, though. Ted Kaczynski was, he was in for the cause. He was
whatever. But I'll tell you what, Ted Kaczynski's current environment is bigger and more comfortable than where he lived in the wild. And he's got a library and doesn't have to go anywhere. So he has more room in his cell than he did in that stupid cabin. And yes, Kaczynski had an IQ of 160 plus. He was a genius. I mean, he's MK Ultra suspected person who was tested on at Harvard, blah, 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 blah. And that's all irrelevant. I'm just saying, look where he lived. Some people are wired a little bit differently.
No, well, look at the famous story of what's his name? What's the guy from physics before Einstein? How can I forget his name?
Well, Feynman, but
Newton. Isaac Newton. Just so people understand how crazy people can be, Isaac Newton to discover calculus and write his book, the Principia or whatever. He locked himself in a room for 2 years and only came out to use the bathroom. Like that guy would just imagine writing a book and being so focused for 2 years, and you come out and you're like, "Here, I've discovered calculus." Like that is the type of genius that takes, right? And change the world,
Well, that you know what, that actually makes me think too. The crazy and all that. Earlier, it was brought up about using the critical thinking skills, because I had Kelly Teal on, who escaped Nexium.
Oh yeah. I saw part of that interview.
Oh well, thank you. Anyway, we were talking about it, and I was pointing out that critical thinking only takes you so far too, because Sir Arthur Conan Doyle, who created Sherlock Holmes, who is literally the template for all critical thinking nowadays, right? He was a nutter who believed so much in spiritualism and mediums and things like that you couldn't even prove him wrong. He lost his, he had a long friendship with Harry Houdini.
Mm-hmm.
And that was after Harry Houdini's mother died and he was bereft. And Doyle, said, "Hey, come here, talk to my, girlfriend or whatever. She's a medium." And she was like, "Oh, all about Harry's mother." And he's like, "Well, how is she talking English? She never spoke it. And why are you saying all this Christian stuff? She was Jewish. And today's her birthday. She would probably say something about it." Mm. And that's what turned Harry Houdini. I don't know if you know that famously he went and busted every medium out there for years. I mean, that's what he would do. It's like, here's how it is. It's a scam. He's a magician, right? And then that was followed up by James Randi in modern day.
Did you see him break down the median? I forgot. There's like a classic episode where
James Randi?
Where James Randi breaks the median. It's like classic. I gotta find that clip for you.
He breaks amazing. Everybody. I mean, well, he had James Randi had $1 million up.
Oh yeah, and nobody ever claimed it, right?
And nobody could. He's the one who got Uri Geller, if I recall.
What? I don't
The
remember.
spoon guy.
Oh yes. I remember that.
Yeah, Yuri's still around and kind of half doing it. I don't know. It's
He did
weird.
break the spoon guy. That was funny.
But anyway, the bottom line is that just because you're a genius, well, sometimes you're a little short on something else.
Well, isn't that what it's supposed to be? Well,
it's like a balance in the brain. It's like if you have too much of one and you need the extra horsepower, you might be a little nutty. Van Gogh cuts off his ear, and you just got all the way down the line. And you know what? I know I'm with a genius who wants to watch Housewives, so it's probably a good time to wrap up.
Oh, me? No. Housewives is on. It's on, what's it called? DVR. So, well, not DVR. What's it called when the one on the cable box when you press record or you tell?
It's a DVR. Yeah, it's not a TiVo. TiVo's the one you pay.
Yeah,
so it's a DVR.
I forget what they call it. They call it something different. Whatever, live recorder. I don't know, but whatever that's on, it's on that box. You know what? I one thing I did want to mention is that the Supreme Court docket. There's some interesting cases on the Supreme Court docket that I think people should be aware of. One of them is a death penalty case, which is fascinating. So this guy, his name is, I think I have it here because I was got to cut the video. I have it written out, but I got to cut the video. So this guy's name is John Ramirez. He's a death row inmate in Texas, and his case has gotten to the Supreme Court. It's going to be heard December 1st. Now, Ramirez, 37, he was convicted of capital murder in 2008 and sentenced to die for the murder and robbery of a guy named Pablo Castillo. He was a convenience store clerk. So the court records showed that Ramirez stabbed him something like 29 times, and Castro only had like $1.25 on him.
That's charming.
Yeah, it's crazy. So he was given the death penalty. So they're in the execution chamber. He's about to go.
Oh, this is the one where he wanted the priest to put his hands on him.
Yes, so he asked. They put a thing in. So he had his spiritual advisor come, and they said that he wanted his spiritual advisor to lay hands on him and audibly pray while he passed over into the other side, while he went on to the other life.
Yeah, I'm okay with that.
So the Texas Department of Criminal Justice says they don't allow that. They only allow advisors into the room. They got to stand in the corner, and they can't pray aloud. They got to pray silently.
Right. Now that would make sense with the electric chair, but with the lethal injection, I don't care. Do you?
But you don't want the guy to pull up, start pulling out. Say, I don't believe in lethal injection. I don't know why they do it. Right?
But I'm saying, okay, electric chair, the guy could get shocked.
Yeah.
Doing it, but other than that, I mean, he's strapped down on a table. Oh, so he's going to jiggle what in the straps?
No, he could pull out the damn the IVs and stuff, right? If the guy wants to, right?
He could
pull out the IVs.
Oh, the person laying his hands on him can?
Yeah, the guy's strapped down. He got IVs in, right? He's like, free him.
And how far is he going to go?
I don't know. That's good. I'm just being facetious. I'm just making a joke. But supposedly now the Supreme Court has to rule whether this guy has a constitutional right.
I think he'll get it
to this. I don't know because at what point does the state? At what point do your religious liberties become really like ridiculous? To stay alive. Well, he's asking he's asking for more than a state. Well, let me read what he's asking for, because he's asking for something very specific. He's asking for he's asking for the pastor to lay hands on him until he dies, saying prayers or scriptures, whispering prayers or scriptures. So that's what he's asking. So he wants to break all the rules. So I don't know. It kind of if you're in that position, it's like,
do I really care about all of that? I mean, we can. I mean, what is it? There's like running jokes about that, about your last meal. It's like, okay, I want this truffle that's found every 20 years in France by the tree with a specific pig. I mean, do I care? Because the pastor, if they're willing to do that, they're putting themselves potentially at risk or not. And if they want to sing, do I care if they sing? No. Do I care if they pray? No. What's the problem here? We do have a freedom of religion. It doesn't sound like
yeah, but your freedom of religion it's within reason, though. It's not
how's that unreasonable? He's not saying keep me alive because it's my religion. That,
Well,
yeah,
no,
that was
but-
where you get. I mean, he's not trying to get out of the sentence. He's
No, but
trying
I'm
to say,
saying-
take me out. And
well,
yeah.
there's two rights here. Number one, he has because don't forget also when you're a convicted felon, you lose some of your rights, but this is not one of those rights. But does his
rights
right
and
because-
rights, by the way, you've got RIGHTS and you have RITES. So
Most
this
rights.
is where we got the two colliding. Okay.
Yeah. So I
want rights to the rights.
I think you're right. I think in this case, these seems like a reasonable accommodation for
I think so.
someone in this case, right? But I don't know what the state's argument is against it, right? The state can say this is a safety concern, right? Usually the reason why we have these rules is because obviously this is a medical procedure and there's HIPAA things.
Yeah, I know.
Whatever they can say. So
shit, which drives me nuts.
yeah,
They're
so we don't. I don't know what the opposite end is, but I'm going to say I think the state can have a reasonable argument to saying the reason why we have it this way is for safety protocols. We're not going to let people lay his hands. Of course, there's a safety issue with having somebody lay hands on somebody who's on the death table. How do we know? So it's not like I don't think this is going to be an easy argument, but I do think
he's going to win.
May split the baby. They may split the baby and say something like laying hands is not acceptable, but singing is, something like that.
Well, I think it's ridiculous that he can't sing or anything. That's beyond the pale. The only question is possibly the laying of the hands. And, what? The singing is offensive to you? Too bad.
No, the singing I don't care about. I'm talking about I think the laying hands is probably going to be the most.
That's the only
part
only
that I think
question.
is going to be the questionable.
And I
way
think they'll win.
They can make it.
I think you've got
possibly,
Amy Coney.
possibly.
You have too much religious side on the Supreme Court.
Yeah, because now it's becoming. I think they've changed the law, which I think is interesting, to say the least, because the law used to be the hard separation between church and state, but now they've changed it to the discrimination of religion. So previously, the state could just say, if you're a religious institution, we're not going to give you any funding.
Mm-hmm.
We're only going to fund secular institutions, and that was the law of the land for the past 100 years.
Sure.
Recently, the Supreme Court's changed that to say if you are giving out funds to companies and you just decide and the state says, well, we're not going to give any funding to religious companies, then that's discrimination based on religion. So that's going to be interesting.
Do you give lawyers last writs?
Do I give lawyers?
It's late, so I can handle a pun. Okay.
It's one of the interesting parts I think about this Supreme Court, is that it's, even though it is more conservative, I'm not fond of their religious rulings, because I think they're working their way into the point where they're going to have to start defining what religion is. Right now, it's just so nebulous. It's really so undefined, where it's just because you really can't define it, right? One man's religion is another man's not their religion.
I know, that's how you have Scientology as a religion. Gotcha.
Yeah, and the Raelians and all that stuff. So it's difficult to define, and I think they're going down the road where, what is exercising a religion? Don't forget, there's been a peyote case and all this stuff. People,
By the way, I'm good with that too. Things. Toke up.
The Supreme Court says no, though.
I know, but okay, but I'm going to a higher opinion. Mine, it's wiser. No, I mean, okay.
you'll be in jail praying. Praying.
Well, no, I can encourage it all day.
Yeah.
I'm not going to jail for saying
no. If you use it and saying I'm my religion, and okay, well, good luck with that. There's a lot of people in jail who try that.
Dude, I'm just happy about the fact that maybe someday I'll be able to do weed without a conscience or a worry. And that already seems crazy.
I think you do that now. I think you do that now. That's
technically yes, legal in Virginia, but it's just that alone shows how far things have flipped. Because think of how many people you put away just on a freaking roach, and that's other. True. I mean, that it was like the level of felony to legal. It's a pretty big jump. It's not felony to misdemeanor. No, it's like legal. Oh, medical. Oh, no, recreational. Oh, wait a minute. Depending on where you are, but I'm like,
think about
this
crazy.
Stuff.
Think about how far. I always tell my kids, I'm like, what? If you guys lived when we were growing up, before the internet, before all these things were living, like we live in such a different world. We live in a different world for women. We live in a different world. And I just, sometimes I think that's the part that I'm most disappointed in, is that, don't get me wrong, I don't think we should rest on our laurels, but I think we should appreciate how far we've come together as a country, and we should be proud of that. That's why I'm always wearing an American shirt. I always say I'm very proud to be an American, because it's never about where you come from, but it's about the journey and where you're going. And I think we're going in the right direction, even though I think sometimes I think
people are trying really hard to screw that one up.
Yeah, but I think I think unfortunately it's all BS. It's all BS because everybody. I think there's a lot of politics to it, but I think at the end of the day, we all want the same thing. There's no Republican. Well, there may be, but there's no honest people who want to be poor, who want to kill. It's just ridiculous. We all want the same thing. Now there's certain people who want to stay within their certain groups or whatever. That happens, black, white, whatever. But I think as a country, if you really, really go back in time and right now start thinking about where we're at now, we can say we've accomplished a lot and we should be proud, but that doesn't mean that we can't move forward. And that's really, I think, the message that's been lost today, especially with all this woke crap going around. So,
you know what? That was spoken by a true silver button YouTuber. Look at the wall behind him. I strive to be a pro someday. And if I've ever heard it, that's a mic drop. Perfect ending. Nate, thank you. Everybody check us out. No holds barred. Unstructured.locals.com. Follow Nate at NateTheLawyer.locals.com. Check out the new channel, folks, please. There's a pinned chat at the top. It's in the description. I deeply, deeply appreciate everyone. And thank you very much and have a great